Guys, I got to tell you, this one took me a minute, but it was a labor of love because it has to do with Jerry Jones stepping down as the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. Diddly diddly dink. He what? I'm Mike Fisher, your trusty and trusted reporter. It's breakfast at Fishinese. We are out of town. You might be able to guess where we are as we're Marcia's son, my stepson Kip, getting married this weekend, and we're having a ball, and we appreciate you letting us have a ball and not pestering us. No, I'm just kidding. 7:20 every morning, whether it's live or like live, we do our best to be here. And of course, starting next week, we'll be back in Frisco, home of the Dallas Cowboys, and all over it. So the headline's an eye catcher. And if the headline's proclamation is true, this would be one of the biggest sports stories of what? The year? It would be one of the biggest sports stories in Dallas ever. It might be one of the biggest NFL stories ever. Because when it happens, it will be gigantic when it happens. The headline is, Jerry Jones no longer calling Dallas Cowboys shots after George Pickens trade. What? That is a monster headline, monster story. It's also uproarious, with Jerry's own top people getting a really good laugh from it. Did I mention I'm Mike Fisher, your trusty and trusted reporter? We appreciate 74,000 fish heads in Cowboy Nation hanging out with us. The George Pickens trade, which obviously there's a lot of onion to peel there. And we continue to be all over it here and at cowboyscountry.com. And yes, we will accept your congratulations for being right. We'll also accept the apologies of those who just didn't get it. Cowboys owner and general manager Jerry Jones is finally, at age 82, giving up those roles that he's held with the tightest of grips since purchasing this franchise, America's team, in 1989. He is? No, he's not. Cancel the celebratory parade, if that's your leaning. Cancel the mourning period, if that's your leaning. Jerry's not going anywhere. So what happened? How is this out there floating around in the ether from Chicago to Dallas? Dallas pulls off the major trade this week with the Steelers. They get George Pickens, as you know. This follows up what many critics thought, took them a minute, a fruitful Cowboys NFL draft. It's the Fort Worth Star-Telegram that has decided to drive this train and probably hit the brakes a little too, hit the accelerator a little too hard, because it caused readers, the audience, and aggregators to completely misunderstand their initial assertion, which they've completely misunderstood themselves. The newspaper kind of suggesting that these moves that everybody likes, it must be because of Stephen. And in fact, is telling us there's kind of a changing of the guard going on before our eyes with the COO, Jerry's son Stephen, quote, having taken on a bigger role this offseason. Now, you and I, we live this. How many times have we talked about this? The day when. And Stephen being the one with the tight rope around the purse strings. And the way they changed, the way they spend, going back about, Brandon Carr, about 13 years ago. We've talked about how Stephen is the guy that has slammed down the brakes when it comes to an absence of frugality. That if this was just Jerry, he might still be wildcatting. But here we're told that Stephen, who you know, already wielded de facto GM level authority around here. He was already powerful. You can't get much more powerful than being the de facto GM. I'm here to tell you, he remains in the same position he's been in for years. There is no change in Stephen Jones's authority. Now, we did tell you a couple months ago that they have started to refer to Stephen and Charlotte, specifically, I assume Jerry Jr. too, as owners. They're calling Charlotte an owner of the Dallas Cowboys. They're calling Stephen an owner of the Dallas Cowboys. That's changed, but we talked about that months ago. That doesn't mean they're doing anything different. Same with the right-hand man, Will McClay. So powerful around here that our colleague Sean Sharif on 105.3 The Fan has suggested that they may have something in writing, some sort of an agreement that when Jerry does step down, step back, Will McClay will be the general manager, like with a title and everything. That's Sean's loose, semi-fun suggestion. I think Sean knows what he's talking about. The younger Jones has for a decade plus been the driving force behind Dallas's conservative spending on outside free agents. A flip-flop from the Wildcat way Dad used to roster build. Dad's the guy who says yes, Stephen's the guy who says no. And everybody knows it when it comes to money. That makes this all the more amusing to think that somehow in the last 14 days, after 14 years of Stephen doing that, in the last 14 days, Stephen suddenly, quote, to quote one of these stories, put his fingerprints all over the franchise. No, he hasn't. His fingerprints were already all over the franchise 14 days ago. Didn't change in the last 14 days. Nonsense. There are ebbs and flows around here when it comes to what happens at the Star in terms of decision making. We've chronicled that for 35 years, from Jimmy and Jerry all the way to now, when sometimes Jerry's a driving force, sometimes Stephen's a driving force. Will McClay is a driving force, and as this show was the very first to tell you, because nobody understood it then and they still don't understand it now because they keep calling the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys a puppet. Jason Garrett had enormous power in the building. He was kind of a co-vice president of general managing too. Right there with Stephen, right there with Will, really. And then McCarthy came here and in about the first week realized he had more personnel authority than he had in a decade and a half in Green Bay. And that's a fact. Now Shadi comes here, and we've been first to report, Shadi was the one pounding on the table for class bullies. And he got him. He's probably, I told you, he probably goes home to his family and goes, can't believe they listen to me. I've never done this before. This is awesome. They can all be driving forces at different times, but that's not new. For fun, I presented this notion of, as one website wrote it, a seismic shift in power. Jerry stepping back, moving into the sunset, the rise, suddenly, of the sun. I presented this to a top Dallas staffer, and this person's response was, to me, shh, laughing, don't tell Jerry. Fish out.